I've talked about fear before, quite a number of occasions actually, but today I want to focus on some really practical things about fear in order to help you get into your fear. Now, most people on the New Age path or these other paths of progressions, they're all trying to get you out of your fear, right? And I'm saying to you, actually, that doesn't deal with your fear. All it does is connect you intellectually into suppressing your fears, and then you finish up carrying your fears around you wherever you go, unfortunately. But what we want to do instead of that, and particularly if you want to receive and continue receiving divine love, you're going to need to work through your fears. Now, many of you have fears about different things, right? Some of you have fears about coming world changes. Some of you have fears along those lines. And so some of you who have fears about it are so involved in finding all about it and finding all the interesting things about it and thinking about it all the time, right? And then others of you who have those same fears do exactly the opposite, you know, they bury their head in the sand. No, it's not happening where I am at least. And we do the opposite to that. But either way, it's fear still that's governing our interaction with that. And fear generates all sorts of problems, which I want to talk about today. Some of us may have fear of spirit interactions. So we often take two sides to that story as well. We get involved in finding everything about spirits. We surround ourselves every day with the white light and the way we go on that path, and we just protect ourselves. Or we go down exactly the opposite path, which is, oh no, there's no such thing as spirits. I don't believe in spirits. And we do the opposite thing, and to try and stay away from those fears. Some of us have fears about personal harm, like violence towards oneself, that we yet to process. And so we avoid all the situations that look like anything like that there might be a potential of violence towards ourselves. And at the extreme, we actually finish up avoiding pretty much every place, because every place there's people who is potentially going to be violent towards oneself, maybe. And so we avoid those places, and eventually we become so fixated on the actual feelings that we're avoiding that we finish up within ourselves coming to the point where we believe that we don't have fear at all, but in reality our whole life is being governed by fear. So that's part of the problem. Then many of us have problems like multi-generational fears that have been passed down from generation to generation. So let's say your mother had been raped, right? And then sometime after the rape gave birth to you. So in other words, there was this multi-generational emotion in her that she may not have dealt with, that she then passed down to yourself. Then you'll have fears about rape or abuse inside of yourself that you won't necessarily understand and where they came from even, but they'll be there. And we need to be able to release them. We need to be able to let go of them somehow. How do you let go of that? Like, that's such a difficult thing to even consider letting go of. Or some of you have come from parents who were in the Second World War, all right? And some of you may have even been very closely associated in your childhood to that. And so what happens there? There was lots of violence and lots of terrible things occurring, terrible atrocities occurring, and those emotions got reflected and imposed upon your soul. And what do you do with those? How do you let go of those? Because in the end, if we want to come to God and actually connect to God in this one-on-one relationship that we've been talking about, what we're going to have to do is get to the point where all of our fears are gone. Every single fear you have will be gone. So you know how you're afraid of snakes and afraid of spiders and afraid of violence and afraid of angry people and afraid... All those fears, they'll all be gone. Afraid of rape, afraid of war, afraid of murder, afraid... All those fears, they'll all be gone, right? When you're at one with God. Won't that be beautiful? It's like we won't even know ourselves in that state, right? Because most of us are still living by our fears. So that's the subject that I'd like to discuss with you today. And tomorrow what I'm going to do is spend a lot of time trying purposefully to trigger your fears. All right, so if you're brave enough to come along tomorrow as well, there are going to be different things that I present to you, and hopefully some of it might be visual as well, that I present to you about different fears that you have. And it will be for the purpose of directly starting to confront some of these fears emotionally. So the reason why I wanted to do in that way is because today I wanted to present to you some practical things you can do to work your way through your fear. And then tomorrow I want to scare the living daylights out of you and see what happens and see whether you put into practice the things that we learned today or not. No, I clear out Monday. You're all on your own after that. But remember, that's one of the fears that we'll address, actually, whether you are on your own or not, because that's part of it. Now, during the sessions today, feel free to ask questions, but you'll need to put up your hands. We've got 2 roving mics to ask those questions so that we can record them. And before I begin as well, though, on the subject, I'd like to talk a little about my own emotions this week, because I'm in a fairly disconnected state today, if you haven't already noticed. During the week, what's been coming up with me is lots of what you call soulmate grief, I suppose, and lots of grief coming up in me about that subject. And during the week, I realised I had 2 spirits attached to me as well who are in a deep grief, male spirits who are in deep grief about their soulmates as well, which are heightening my soulmate grief emotions. And so I'm having to work my way through those emotions. So if I just burst out crying for some unknown reason during the presentation today, you'll know that it's a known reason related to that generally. I'm finding with that emotion, I'm really happy about it because it's affecting so many parts of my body and has done for such a long time, that I'm really happy to be starting to get into it. But it's just come up at this time when we've got this presentation. That's the way things go at times, isn't it, in your life? And so I'm trying to stay in the emotion that I'm feeling while still presenting this subject to you. So hopefully we'll see how we go with that. Now, the presentation that I do today and tomorrow, there'll be the topics for them I'm typing up at the moment, and they'll be on the internet, and they're available on the www.divinetruth.com website under seminar downloads. You'll see the PDF document as well as the MP3 from today. The PDF documents I hope to have completed by Monday, because the PDF document tomorrow is going to give you a list of movies and books that you can watch and read purposefully to trigger certain types of fears. Right? And initially we thought we'd only come up with 10 or 20, but at the moment the list's way up there, and I'm still going, so I don't know when we're going to get it finished between today and Monday. But what there is a long list of different types of movies.